Did you bend yourself out of shape just to be accepted? Did you shrink your voice, silence your truth, and bury your instincts under layers of performance just to fit into a space that was never built for your soul? These aren't casual questions. They're emotional detonators. They're meant to rattle you, because real healing doesn't come wrapped in soft words and surface-level comfort. It comes when you finally stare down the quiet damage, the damage of becoming who you're not, just to be loved by people who never really saw you. Healing starts when you confront the silence that has swallowed your truth for years. The silence that let you smile when your heart was breaking, that let you say, "I'm fine," when you were screaming inside. The silence that turned survival into your only language. But here you are, still watching. And that means something. That means you're tired of playing dead in a life that was never truly yours. You're ready to claw your way out of the numbness. You're ready to trade survival for something wilder, more honest, more alive. You're ready to live with both hands, with full breath, with nothing held back. Carl Jung didn't hand out band-aids for deep wounds. He didn't sugarcoat reality or feed us fairy tales about peace that comes without pain. What he offered was raw, unsettling, and transformative. Awareness so sharp it cuts through denial like glass. The kind of awareness that doesn't just lift the veil, it rips it off. Not just from the faces around you, but from your own. The cheerful mask you've worn like armor. The polite smile that hides the constant ache in your chest. The calm voice you use to swallow your anger, hoping it doesn't leak out in front of the wrong people. The sweetness that isn't kindness, it's fear wearing perfume. Fear of being too much, too loud, too angry, too real. And so you twisted yourself into a softer version. One that could be loved by people who never had the capacity to love the real you. But that version, that performance, that ghost of yourself, it's not you. It's who you became to survive rooms that never deserved your presence in the first place. Love was never meant to feel like shape-shifting. It was never meant to ask you to mute your voice just to be heard, or to trade your authenticity for approval. When affection demands your silence, it's no longer affection, it's a muzzle. When loyalty begins to drain your essence, demanding blind obedience over mutual respect, it stops being loyalty and becomes self-abandonment. That's not love. That's bondage dressed in sweet words. That's emotional currency, traded in guilt and fear. It's dependence masquerading as devotion. It's control hidden behind, "I care about you." And this is what Carl Jung screamed without ever raising his voice. The truth that some forces don't come with chains, but they still imprison you. They slowly dissolve your identity until you're just a flicker of who you were, wandering your own life like a ghost with no home. This is where everything shifts. The unraveling begins here, because once the illusion cracks, once the veil lifts, even for a second, you can't go back. You start seeing clearly the manipulation dressed as love, the sarcasm that cloaks cruelty, the confusion that keeps you compliant, the subtle invalidation that makes you question your own mind. You catch the contempt hiding in the corners of polite smiles, the way sacrifice is painted as noble while your spirit quietly bleeds. You notice how belonging was never real. It was surrender. It was silence. It was surviving by shrinking. Every gesture, every moment you thought was normal, now screams control. These weren't quirks. They were chains, crusted, silent, and heavy. And now that your eyes are open, the real question is no longer what happened, but will you still pretend not to see it just to be accepted? This isn't some sugar-coated motivational speech. This is a mirror, clear, cold, and unkind. Not the kind that tells you you're doing fine, but the kind that exposes the quiet damage you've normalized. It reflects the truth you've been dodging, the relationships you've held onto, even as they hollowed you out, the masks you've worn so long they started to feel like skin, the boundaries you blurred just to keep the peace, even when it tore you apart. It shows you the roles you auditioned for just to be chosen, the parts you played just to feel safe, and now the illusion is gone. You're staring straight at the cost of your own survival. But here's where everything changes, because the moment you name the poison, you're no longer powerless. You can either keep drinking it and calling it love, or you can start spitting it out, sip by sip, silence by silence, self-betrayal by self-betrayal. The first step: stop glorifying your suffering like it's a badge of honor. Stop calling it growth when it's really just self-abandonment. Pain doesn't make you wiser when you keep letting it happen. It just makes you numb. And yet, you've been taught to dress it up in the language of strength, to call betrayal a lesson, to call emotional neglect independence, to call staying silent maturity. But the truth is louder than all those lies. The people who hurt you don't deserve your empathy if it comes at the cost of your dignity. And above all, stop gaslighting yourself. You are not too emotional. You are not too much. You're simply done shrinking to fit into places that can't hold your truth. You're not broken, you're just breaking free. You see, all those patterns you allowed, those quiet moments when you swallowed your pain and smiled anyway, weren't just things that happened to you. They were betrayals, not just by others, but by the part of you that kept choosing silence over self-respect. Every moment you let disrespect slide, every time you downplayed your hurt, just to keep the peace, you whispered a lie to yourself, that your feelings were too inconvenient to be acknowledged, that your boundaries were optional, but not anymore. That silence ends today, because the voice you've buried under years of people-pleasing and self-doubt, it's not fragile, it's fire, and the moment you let it speak, you stop being a victim of your past and start becoming the author of your future. That voice is your power, and it's been waiting for you to listen. Jung didn't write for the faint of heart. He didn't guide you toward a tidy, polished life wrapped in social approval. He wanted you to wake up, not just exist. He wanted you to bleed truth, to walk straight into the terrifying parts of yourself that you've buried under busyness, politeness, and pretending. To confront the anger you've been told to suppress, to sit with your sadness until it tells you what it came to teach, to stop shrinking yourself for comfort, and finally, unapologetically claim your space, even if that space feels empty at first. And yes, it comes with loss, real loss, the kind that strips you down to your bones. You will lose people who only loved the watered-down version of you. You will confuse the ones who fed on your silence. You'll be called selfish, cold, even broken. But what they call chaos is your liberation. And those lonely nights when nothing feels stable and everything you thought you knew about yourself starts to crack, that's where your real self starts speaking. Not the self designed to survive, but the one built to live. That rebirth doesn't come in crowds, it doesn't come with fanfare. It's forged in silence, in soul-deep solitude, in the raw and ruthless confrontation with your own reflection. That is where transformation happens, and it is anything but safe. So what now? You begin with the ache you've been ignoring, the tightness in your chest that whispers when the world goes quiet, that restlessness, that fatigue, that subtle heartbreak you've mistaken for normal. It's not weakness, it's wisdom. It's your soul tugging at your sleeve, begging you to stop betraying it for comfort. So you listen, not to the noise around you, but to the voice inside. The one that finally says, I can't keep doing this, not like this. And that's the moment everything changes. Not in a flash, not with a dramatic explosion, but in slow, trembling defiance. You begin to move differently. You start saying no without explanation. You begin reclaiming time, space, and silence as your birthright. You stop contorting yourself to fit into rooms that make you feel invisible. You remove the mask of "I'm fine" and admit when you're not. You stop handing out pieces of yourself to people who've only ever held them carelessly. You no longer entertain conversations that drain you. You walk away from roles you outgrew a long time ago. And for the first time, you don't feel guilty for choosing yourself. This is not a return to some former self. It's not about getting back to who you were before the world taught you to hide. It's about becoming who you were always destined to be. Before fear rewrote your story, it's not rebellion, it's resurrection. And it begins the moment you choose your truth over your performance. You will lose people, the ones who only stayed because you kept shrinking. You will lose approval, the kind that was conditional, transactional, and tied to how well you played a role that was never yours. You will lose comfort, not the kind that heals, but the kind that numbs you into silence and convinces you to tolerate just a little more pain. And it will hurt. It will feel like your world is unraveling. But that unraveling is sacred, because what you're really shedding isn't your life, it's the illusion of it. And in that loss, you will find something infinitely more precious. You will gain clarity. You will gain voice. You will gain boundaries that don't waver. You will gain a spine where there used to be apology. And most of all, you will gain you, the version of you that existed before the world handed you its script, the version that doesn't settle, doesn't beg, and doesn't break just to be loved. You'll finally see your reflection, not the watered-down version shaped by survival, but the raw, radiant self that's been waiting all along. In the end, the goal isn't to be liked. It's to live without abandoning yourself. Being liked is easy when you're willing to bleed for approval, when you wear masks so perfectly that even you forget who's underneath. But wholeness? That's a rebellion. Wholeness means picking up the pieces of yourself you were told to hide. It means accepting the parts that don't make you convenient, the truths that make others uncomfortable, and the feelings that refuse to stay silent. The goal was never to squeeze into spaces that shrink you just to avoid judgment. It was to expand into your full truth, your full voice, your full self. You weren't born to fit in, you were born to belong, not to a crowd but to your own essence. And that kind of belonging doesn't require permission. It demands honesty, the kind of honesty that disrupts false peace and dares to say, I will no longer betray myself just to make others comfortable, because peace isn't found in pleasing everyone. It's found in finally making peace with the voice you've spent years ignoring, your soul. Carl Jung once said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And he didn't mean the curated version. He meant the raw, unedited, unfiltered self, the one buried beneath years of pretending, pleasing, and performing. This journey isn't about revenge. It's not about tallying the pain or pointing fingers. It's not about wearing your scars like weapons or proving your worth to those who never saw it. It's about returning to the self that existed before the world told you who to be, to your truth, the one that speaks in whispers when everyone else is shouting, to your essence, that inner knowing you tried to silence just to keep the peace, to your center, the part of you that was never lost, only ignored. And from that sacred ground, you begin to live differently. You don't just survive what once broke you, you outgrow it. You rise from it, you see it clearly, and with that clarity comes strength. The kind of strength that no longer begs, no longer chases, because when you come home to yourself, you realize the battle was never to be loved, it was to stop forgetting who you were in the first place. So ask yourself now, as the silence settles around you, leaving space for nothing but truth. Are you ready to choose yourself? Are you ready to stand in the fullness of who you are, without apology, without hesitation? Because this is the moment, the pivotal point where everything changes. This is where your story begins, not with the shadows of the past or the opinions of others, but with the clarity of your own voice. It starts with you finally putting your needs, your desires, your boundaries before anything else. It begins when you stop seeking validation from the world and start seeking it from within. This is where you choose to break free from the patterns that have kept you in chains. It's the rebirth you've been resisting, the transformation you've been avoiding, and it's happening right now. So, are you ready to step into the life you always meant to live? Because it all starts with this one choice: choosing yourself, once and for all.